those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. Purport. The word Trividya refers to the three Vedas, Sama, Yajur, and Rig. A Brahmana who has studied these three Vedas is called Trivedi. Anyone who is very much attached to knowledge derived from these three Vedas is respected in society. Unfortunately, there are many great scholars of the Vedas who do not know the ultimate purport of studying them. Therefore, Krishna herein declares himself to be the ultimate goal of the three Vedas. Actual three Vedas take shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna and engage in pure devotional service to satisfy the Lord. Devotional service begins with the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra and side by side trying to understand Krishna in truth. Unfortunately, those who are simply official students of the Vedas become more interested in offering sacrifices to the different demigods like Indra and Chandra. By such endeavor, the worshippers of different demigods are certainly purified of the contamination of the lower qualities of nature and are thereby elevated to the higher planetary systems or heavenly planets, known as Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, etc. Once situated on those higher planetary systems, one can satisfy his senses hundreds of thousands of times better than on this planet. Okay, so go over the verse again. Trividya mam samaparputa papa yagniya istva svargatim Yante te punyam asatya surindra lokam asnanti divyan divadeva bogan. Those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nivase Sunyavadi Paschachade Satarane. So in this verse is speaking a little bit about the demigods. First of all, those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, because there are people who study the Vedas. We study the Vedas, some of the Vedas anyway. We're not seeking the heavenly planets. We're seeking to go back to the spiritual world. So those who seeking the heavenly planets, they worship me indirectly. So we have to see that the different demigods, Vayu, Chandra, Indra, they are different limbs of the body of the Lord. So if we see that they are just a limb of the Lord or a part of the Lord or a representative of the Lord, and then we actually worship them as the representative of the Lord, then that's okay if we're not worshiping them as they are the all in all. But if we're worshiping them, even if we're worshiping them as, okay, they are part of the Lord, but we're worshiping them from material things, also in Bhagavad Gita says that is less intelligent. It's less intelligent. Why would you go and waste your time getting some temporary happiness? Even though the happiness is way better than any happiness we can experience here on this planet. We experience happiness here, and it's really not that great. It's all relative. Some people may be happier than others, but it's still the greatest happiness you get. It's temporary. Even if it is, you think it's great, it's nothing compared to heavenly planets, but at the same time it's also temporary. And there's also a lot of misery. You can't just get happiness. You get the misery with it. You can't have one without the other. Both of them come not exactly simultaneously, but one and then the other. It's constantly. You can't always be happy, and you can't always be miserable. Even if you wanted to be miserable, I don't know anybody that really wants to be miserable, but even if you wanted to, you can't. Happiness and distress are going to come. So I'm going to go over this. The word Trividya refers to the Vedas, Samayajur and Rig Veda. There's the Atharva Veda. I don't know why the Atharva Veda is not included. There's 4 Vedas, but the Atharva Veda is not included in the Trividya, or 3 Vedas. A Brahmana who has studied the 3 Vedas is called Trivedi. Trivedi. There's some people, you may know some people with their last name, Trivedi. I do. Anyone who is very much attached to knowledge derived from these 3 Vedas is respected in society. So they may be respected because they're generally more in the mode of goodness. There's 3 modes of nature, which in this purport mentions these modes of nature. There's goodness, there's passion, and there's ignorance. So by studying these Vedas, one can become free from passion and ignorance and be situated in goodness, or at least mostly in goodness, and he can go to heavenly planets. Here it says, unfortunately, there are many great scholars of the Vedas who do not know the ultimate purport of studying them. In the 15th chapter, let's see, Vedaischa Savaya Hameva Vedya, Vedanta Krid Veda Vid Eva Chaham. Krishna says, indeed, I'm the compiler of Vedanta and the knower of the Vedas. And by all the Vedas, I am to be known. So we can study the Vedas. What is the purpose of studying the Vedas? Is it to go to the heavenly planets? Is it to just show that you're such a smart person? Is it just to get more and situated in the mode of goodness? Why do we study the Vedas? So, ultimate purpose of studying the Vedas is to come to know Krishna. Krishna is the end of Vedanta, Bhakti Vedanta. Bhakti is the end of all knowledge. So when you come to the end of knowledge, you come to Bhakti. And that's the purpose of studying the Vedic literatures. And if you don't ultimately come to that point, it's pretty much a waste of time unless you go further. You go to the heavenly planets and then you continue and not enjoying the sense gratification, but trying to understand further about who you are, who God is, and your relationship with God. In the 5th canto, just reading today about, I've been reading for a few days, but about these different varshas. There are different varshas. The material world is divided up into so many different varshas. There's Bart Varsha. We are in Bart Varsha, but there's other varshas. And each one is twice as big as the others, and there's yojanas. There's like millions of miles. And there's mountains on them that are, hundreds of thousands of miles high. We don't know anything like that here, but there are. And in it, on every different varsha, they worship different demigods. But they worship the demigods as part of the Supreme Lord. They don't worship them separate from the Supreme Lord. So in other words, they're trying to please, ultimately to please Krishna, but they're worshiping a demigod, but knowing that demigod is a representative of Krishna. And in it, Prabhupada says that if you worship the demigod in that way, then it's okay to worship the demigods. But in general, we don't worship the demigods. Because most people who worship demigods are not worshiping them because they want to worship Krishna. Because we can worship Krishna directly. We don't have to go through any demigods to worship Krishna. You have to go through a bona fide line of disciplic succession. So we go through Srila Prabhupada and Srila Prabhupada's representatives. And then you can be connected to the Parampara system. Okay. Therefore, Krishna herein declares himself to be the ultimate goal of the 3 Vedas. Actually, Trivedi's take shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna and engage in pure devotional service to satisfy the Lord. So if you really have this knowledge, that's what you're going to do. You're going to engage in serving Krishna. That's the purpose of life. Purpose of life isn't just to get a nice husband or a nice wife or a nice house or a nice car or a nice job or a nice country to live in. The purpose of life has nothing to do with any of these things. The purpose of life, I mean, you can get these things, but that's not the purpose of life. What is the use of it if at the end you got to take birth again in this material world and you don't even know what position you're going to be? You may be in a very poor family and there's so many horrible situations you can be born in this material world. So better you do your business and get out of here. You do what you have to do. You have to work, you have to maintain yourself, you have to have shelter. I mean, there's certain things that are absolutely necessary just to survive. But the goal shouldn't be just surviving on a higher material platform, but the goal should be, okay, I got all my maintenance taken care of, now I can devote my time to Krishna, to engage in his service. We have Radha Gopi Vallabha here. One can engage in serving Radha Gopi Vallabha, and then their life can become perfect. And then at the end of their life, they can go back and live with Radha Gopi Vallabha eternally. So devotional service begins with the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. That's the beginning. Prabhupada has stressed this, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. He came to this country, and that's what he stressed. And they chanted for hours. And they even chanted the same simple tune for hours. They didn't have all this fancy switching melodies. It was just very simple. They chanted. And became purified. This is the beginning. Chanting these holy names. Krishna has descended in this Kali Yuga in the form of his holy names. This sound vibration is directly imported from the spiritual world. It's not a material sound. And when one chants it, when one hears it, one becomes purified. Krishna is present in his name. He's absolute. And anything in relationship with himself is not different from him. So when we chant Hare Krishna, we're actually associating directly with Krishna. And because Krishna is supremely pure, by that association we become purified. So it's not a very difficult thing. And it doesn't cost anything. So one has to start by chanting Hare Krishna. And then it says, and side by side, trying to understand Krishna in truth. Reading books, Bhagavad Gita as it is, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, discussing with devotees. Devotees, not just some Brahmin or somebody who has some knowledge of the Vedas, but they're actually devoting their life to God. Discuss with them. And then you can understand Krishna in truth. So that's the purpose of this human form of life, and that's what we should be doing. Chanting Hare Krishna and trying to understand Krishna in truth. So the practical way, as I was saying, to try to understand Krishna in truth, reading books by a pure devotee. All of Srila Prabhupada's books. Read any of them or all of them, or as many of them as you can. Trying to know them in truth. And then things you don't understand, you can write them down. Write down the page number in the book. It's just practical. And then come to the temple and ask them devotee. I read this, I don't quite understand. What does this mean? And in most cases, you get your answers. In some cases, there's things that a lot of people don't understand. But we accept it as truth, whether we understand it or we don't understand it. We still accept it. So we have to learn, study, discuss with devotees, and especially things we don't understand, ask questions. Asking questions is intelligent. There's you should come to a point when you don't have any more doubts. But doubts is in the beginning. Doubts are a sign of intelligence. You're not just accepting blindly. that you accept blindly, then you could just also leave blindly, foolishly. So when you have something that doesn't make sense in your own mind, you should ask. And eventually you'll come to a point where now, even though there's something I may not understand, I don't have any doubts about Krishna consciousness. I'm 100% convinced this is right, even though I can't understand this specific aspect. But I know the fault is on me, not on the philosophy. So then you should have no more doubts. But in the beginning, doubts are a sign of intelligence. But eventually, by hearing and chanting about Krishna, by studying these books in association of devotees, your doubts should be nullified. So unfortunately, those who are simply official students of the Vedas become more interested in offering sacrifices to the different demigods like Indra and Chandra. The Vedas mainly deal with this. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas mainly deal with the subject of the three modes of material nature. That's what the Vedas mainly deal with. So Krishna says, rise above these modes, be transcendental to all of them, be free from all dualities, and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. The Vedas deal with mostly the three modes of nature. So someone who's studying the Vedas, without a bona fide guru, a devotee, is not going to come to the correct conclusion. Even in the Vedas, what happened? Who wrote the Vedas? Anybody know who wrote them? Who? Yes, Srila Vyasadeva. But after writing all the Vedas, he was not satisfied. He felt despondent. Normally you do something really good. You work your whole life. You just do something so good, sacrificing your whole life, not getting anything back from it materially. He's not selling the Bhagavatams. He's not, signing them and getting another one waiting in line in the bookstore to buy a set and making a profit on it. He's just writing them for the benefit of the future people, because when Kali Yuga begins, people no longer have perfect memories. Before that, there was no reason to write it. It was spoken, you heard it, you remembered it, you knew it. That was it. But now Kali Yuga is beginning. This is not going to be there anymore. So he had to write it all down. So he spoke it. He spoke it all. Ganesh wrote it. But after doing all of this work and writing all of this, and he wasn't satisfied. So he went to his guru. Who was his guru? Narada Muni. He went to Narada Muni. And he told him that I did all this service, I wrote all the Vedas, it's like I'm feeling something is lacking. And Narada Muni told him, yes, in one sense you have done a disservice, because you just talked about how to obtain all kinds of material things, the proper way of obtaining them by following the Vedic literatures. But you haven't sufficiently broadcasted the glories of the Lord. So then after he wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam, in his mature stage and that's a book about just glorifying the Lord. So we can skip all this Vedic stuff about how to obtain this or obtain that by worshiping this demigod or that demigod. If you just read the Vedas, that's what you're going to conclude. You're not going to come to the understanding of Krishna, because there's too much in there. But there's all the different sciences are in there. But if you want to learn the spiritual science, then you can just go straight to the Srimad Bhagavatam, straight to the Bhagavad Gita. You can read these books, and then you can understand the real purport of the Vedic literatures to know Krishna. So it's in one sense here, unfortunately, those who are simply official students of the Vedas become more interested in offering sacrifices to the different demigods, like Indra and Chandra. By such endeavor, the worshippers of different demigods are certainly purified of the contamination of the lower qualities of nature. Lower qualities of nature, I mentioned, are ignorance and passion. So you get purified of them, and are thereby elevated to the higher planetary systems or heavenly planets. Hari bol. But what good is going to the heavenly planets? It's temporary. You enjoy like anything. It's for sense gratification. Everyone wants to enjoy. There's no way you can enjoy more than on the heavenly planets. It's so much material enjoyment. But it says, once situated on those higher planetary systems, one can satisfy his senses hundreds of thousands of times better than on this planet. But it's temporary. After you use up all your pious credits, then you have to come back. What's the use of it? It's like having your last meal in a, and you're going to get executed. So from at least, I don't know if they really do this, but I think they do, because you see it in the movies, Of course, I haven't seen it in movies lately, but many, many years ago, when somebody's going to get their last meal, they give them whatever they want for their last meal. So how can you enjoy that? Right after that, they're going to execute you. You're dead. So how can you enjoy knowing it's going to end? So how can you enjoy the heavenly planets? In the heavenly planets, you can enjoy only because you're forgetting that it's going to end. You're in ignorance. So you might be in such ignorance that your last meal, you're going to get executed, and you think, whoa, this is really good. Oh, how good. You got to be a complete fool to be able to think that way when you're having your last meal. You're going to be thinking, I'm going to be dead. You can't really enjoy it. So only because we get in illusion, thinking that this material happiness is going to last, then we can enjoy it. If you know it's going to end, it's like it takes all the fun out of it. So in this material world, even on the heavenly planets, all that enjoyment, they enjoy much longer. One day on the heavenly planets is like a year here. So they live there for very, very long periods of time. But even though they're there for a long time, it's still temporary. It's nothing compared to eternity. It's still just a flash. So why waste your time in that way? Better chant Hare Krishna and make your life successful. And then eventually, even if you chant Hare Krishna and you don't completely become purified, in your next life you'll begin where you left off. You don't lose anything. Your whole spiritual life continues. Whether you're on this planet or you may even go to the heavenly planets, but you're still going to continue where you left off. So I'll read the verse one more time. Those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. No big deal. Okay, anyone have any questions? Thank you.
Sometimes our government will tell us so many things.
Sometimes our what?
Our government may
Yes.
tell us so many things. Like, for instance, they've said that we've gone to the moon.
Yeah.
But we know Prabhupada has said that they couldn't have gone to the moon because the moon is actually much further away. So do we just accept on the basis of higher authority like this and disregard then what we're reading in the newspapers?
Yes, of course. First of all, what you read in the newspapers, you hear so many things. The scientists have found out there was this thing, I think it was carbon-13 or something, where they can date everything. And they dated all these different things of when they happened or when this was found. And then they found out that that was inaccurate. So then so all that information is useless. They don't know. They find one thing, and one scientist finds that one other scientist is wrong in their understanding of something. So you can't accept them as an authority. We accept the Vedas. We accept we accept Srila Prabhupada. We accept the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. We accept the pure devotees as authority. and whatever they say, that's what we accept. If the government or the scientist or anybody else says anything else, we don't care what they say. It's funny about even the moon, because when they landed on the moon, I don't know if anybody here was around at that time or conscious, older enough to know what was going on, but pretty much everyone accepted that they landed on the moon. And then many years later, people were coming up with so many theories that they couldn't have landed on the moon because of this and this and this. They found so many flaws in this movie that they put out. So whether they went on the moon, it doesn't even matter. What did they do? Prabhupada said they may have gone to Rahu. There's another planet. They could have gone to another planet thinking it's the moon. Or even if you can go to the moon is a heavenly planet. They didn't see anything. They couldn't actually enter into the atmosphere. It's subtle. So if you go to they see some dirt. That's all they see. So they don't know they didn't really enter into the moon. So whether or not you want to accept that or you just accept the scientists blindly, you're accepting them blindly. I mean, you're accepting authority. Everyone is accepting authority. You can accept the scientists who have been proven many, many times have lied and cheated, or you can accept the spiritual authority who have never lied or cheated. Nobody here has gone to the moon, so how do you know if they went? You're just accepting them as an authority. You're believing them. We don't just believe them, especially the materialists. We don't accept just because they say something, we're going to believe it. They don't like that. Even the doctors get really upset when you challenge them or you don't just accept what they tell you. I remember one doctor, a friend of mine, who wouldn't do what the doctor said. The doctor had called, what do they call it, these social workers to come and see, maybe take the child away because he's not listening to the doctor. But he had another doctor who was an actual medical doctor, but he also practiced, I think, homeopathy or some other type of medicine. But he was a medical doctor, and he was doing something else. So he got involved, and there was two doctors, both regular medical doctors, but one wanted to do the one thing for the child, the other one wanted to do something else. So of course they didn't take the child away. But they get upset. They don't challenge their authority. I remember with vaccines, a doctor was trying to tell me that we should give our kids these vaccines. We didn't want to do it. We read a lot about it, and there's a lot of reasons not to do it. I'm not telling anyone to do it or not to do it. You do whatever you like, but you could at least be advised. Don't just accept the doctors blindly. But we told him we didn't want to do it. And the doctor told me that so many children died from measles. And I asked him, how many of those children, this was in America, he's saying, died from measles. I said, how many of those children were vaccinated? He said, I don't know. Lots of times you get the disease just even from the vaccination. I'm not trying to preach vaccinating or not vaccinating. I'm just trying to say that people who are authorities, when you challenge their authority, they get pretty upset because people in general don't challenge them. So we don't just accept blindly what these scientists say, what the doctors say, what the government says. We don't accept it blindly, so they may not like it. Too bad. What are they going to do? So we can accept blindly what Srila Prabhupada says. Blindly in a sense. It's not blind because it makes sense. It's logical. But even if there's something we can't understand, then we will accept it. We may accept it and not understand it and maybe question to some senior devotees, what does this mean? But we accept it as a fact. So we accept the authority of the Vedas, we accept the authority of the pure devotees, and we don't accept the authority of some materialist who's simply interested in his own sense gratification. We don't accept them as authority. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah, can you speak loud?
Yeah. So, Prabhuji, I have one question. Like, we try to tell a lot of outsiders
Try to tell what?
about Krishna consciousness to others,
Yeah.
but still they are not convinced for taking this practice process. But what made you convinced when your initial days to like share some of your realizations so that?
What convinced me?
Yeah, initially.
Oh. Well, first of all, people aren't convinced because they're not even looking for it. They don't want spiritual life. They're satisfied in this material world. I wasn't satisfied in this world. I just saw there was no happiness. There's no pleasure here. There was some happiness, but it wasn't much of anything. I really was pretty fried with material life. And I knew there had to be more to life than this. If that's all there is, what's the use of even living? To me, it didn't make any sense. I thought about, okay, I'm going to get married. I had a girlfriend. We're getting engaged. I had a ring. We're going to get married. We're going to have kids. We're going to buy a house. Going to, of course, get a job, buy a house. Kids will grow up, send them to college. They'll get married and have kids. I'll become a grandfather, and then I die. So that doesn't make any sense. I thought, if I got to go through all that trouble just to come to death, why don't I just die now? Just a big waste of time, if that's the ultimate that's going to happen. And there had to be more to life than that. So I started looking. And I searched out so many different things, so many different religions. And every time I found one thing wrong, I'd reject it. I wouldn't just reject it, I'd question it. I'd question the authorities, and when they gave me an answer that wasn't satisfactory, because I would reject it, because I thought God is perfect, and the religion that he wants us to follow has to be perfect. If it's not perfect, then it's not what I want. I want the perfect religion. And then I eventually came to Krishna consciousness, and I had a lot of questions. Not like people here don't seem to have any questions. I had a lot of questions. And all my questions were answered very satisfactory. It made so much sense. It had to be logical. I wasn't just accepting the Vedas. I didn't accept the Vedas at the time. But I accepted logic and reason. It's the lowest standard. But it had to be logical to me. It had to be reasonable. It had to make sense. And if it didn't make sense, then I'd reject it. So the devotees defeated me on logic and reason. And then once I actually understood, Krishna consciousness, then I started to accept the Vedas and accept the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam and accept all the authorities in Krishna consciousness as bona fide authorities, and then I accepted whatever they would say. But it took me a while before I came to that platform. But most people you talk to, they're not really interested in spiritual life. They're not sincere. They have to be sincere. And most people are not that sincere. They may be sincere about their sense gratification, but they're not sincere about spiritual life, about making spiritual advancement. And that's what you have to be in order to accept Krishna consciousness. Anyone who's sincerely searching for the truth, if they hear this Krishna conscious philosophy and they have a brain, they have to accept this. It makes perfect sense. There's nothing that makes more sense than this Krishna consciousness. People have there's so many different religions, and none of them are as complete. Even the Christians, we accept Jesus. We don't accept their understanding of Christianity. Jesus, he was a devotee. And he couldn't tell them everything. He could tell, he just taught some basic principle. And they didn't listen to him. Thou shalt not kill, and then they crucify him. So Jesus, we do not find any fault at all in Jesus. He's a guru. But people don't follow him. Most people. We're following him. Okay, there's a couple of more minutes. Any more questions? Bimi, you don't have a question?
Was there a time when you realized that you were just going to be happier following this path than no matter what you did in the material? Like, is there an example? That's what Westerners are looking for.
Well, I remember in my family, we never really had a conversation. And then when I got into Krishna consciousness, it's the first time we ever had a conversation. And I remember telling my father, I just want to be happy. And my father's response was, nobody's happy. And it was actually an intelligent response, because materially, nobody is happy. But you can be happy. But that happiness is not material. Krishna says, as you surrender unto me, I reward you accordingly. So as we surrender more to Krishna, directly to Krishna, he rewards us with peace, with bliss, with happiness, with genuine happiness. And you don't have to suffer so much. In the material world, everyone has to suffer. You become kind of, like you can look at Srila Prabhupada, someone could say he's suffering, because materially, he's an old man, he's sick, he was dying, he's suffering. He weighed like maybe 60 pounds at the most before he left his body. He said, I'm just a stack of bones. But he never took any painkillers, and it's so painful. But he wasn't suffering. His mind was on Krishna. It's almost like when you're working and you cut yourself. And, those who have, a lot of people who work with their hands, they cut them, and they don't even notice. They're bleeding. And then when they see the blood, they see that they didn't feel any pain at all, because their consciousness was into the work they're doing, or into something else they're doing, so they didn't feel the pain. So if you're Krishna conscious, even if there's pain, it doesn't feel the same. So it's a fact, we want to be happy, and this is the only thing that's going to bring us happiness. So that's why I took to Krishna consciousness. I wanted to be happy, not just getting some chapala sukha, flickering happiness from gratifying my senses. That didn't do it for me. That just didn't satisfy me. It's just like, wow, big deal. I was never satisfied. I mean, I was satisfied with it up to a point. Then I came to starting to think a little bit. And then, once you start thinking, it's like, this just doesn't do it. Before you think, while you're an animal, it's fine. Human life begins, a tato brahma jignasa. Now in the human form of life is a time to inquire about the absolute truth. Before you start inquiring about the absolute truth, you're a two-legged animal. You're not considered human. So, anyway, time for Arti. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.